You bring a child who's obviously got a visual handicap into this classroom, and the teacher is now going to have to adjust her teaching to that kid's needs. And that's going to benefit all those other kids who are having trouble seeing what she's writing on the board. And that's just one example.
Why do you believe that incorporating education that accounts for disabled children, why do you think that helps children en masse or every child sitting in a government school classroom?
Well, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because we often feel we're doing the disabled child a favor by allowing them into the mainstream class. But in fact, the disabled child presents us with a kind of lens to look through that suddenly we start to see things differently. A disabled child is very obviously disabled. They have maybe problems with walking or talking or hearing or seeing. But in recognizing that and having that child in our classroom and having to account for that kid and include that child, we suddenly start to realize that other children have got disabilities too, but they're hidden. I'll give you one example. If you look at a typical room of educated people, you will almost always find that 30% of them have glasses, or they've had corrective surgery, or they are wearing contacts. So you may not always know it, but if you ask people to raise their hands, nobody's ashamed of it. It's not a handicap that we feel we have to hide. The stigma has been removed from these kind of visual handicaps. 30% of them always, and sometimes more, will raise their hands. In a government school, you take a photograph of any government classroom, you will not find a single child wearing glasses. It's almost unheard of. Even though the government provides free glasses for disabled children, parents aren't aware of it, kids make fun of them. There are lots of reasons why it is that way. And 50 years ago, it was that way for typical people as well. But what that tells us is that 30% of the children in our classrooms are having trouble seeing the board. And the board is God Almighty as far as the way that we learn in typical classrooms go. So what is that child meant to do? They can't see the assignment. If the kid next to them tells them, okay, they can write it down, but they may even have trouble with that. So we're basically unaware of the fact that 30% of our kids are having trouble seeing. You bring a child who's obviously got a visual handicap into this classroom, and the teacher is now going to have to adjust her teaching to that kid's needs, and that's going to benefit all those other kids who are having trouble seeing what she's writing on the board. And that's just one example. Maria Montessori was this amazing doctor who worked with mentally handicapped children, and she realized that they weren't learning anything she was trying to teach them until she started to use activity-based learning, until she started bringing objects in, actually letting them do things rather than just, abstract concepts. And that process became so appealing to parents of typical kids because everybody learns best by doing. But you bring a child with an intellectual disability into a classroom who will only learn that way, suddenly the whole classroom comes alive with this activity-based approach. So I just see so many benefits from inclusion, from bringing everybody's needs into the forefront. You look at ramps, they are put in place for wheelchairs, but we're all carrying our wheelie bags into our buildings. We're all mothers, fathers coming in with kids in prams. We've got equipment that we need to bring into the building. A ramp helps everybody. There's no downside to it.
Super, thanks for that. Where do you see special schools fitting into this framework? Do you think they're antithetical to the inclusion movement? Or do you see that there is a place for certain children to learn the best in a school that offers education for special needs?
That's a very important question, and it's one that we wrestle with all the time in the field. As things stand right now, I would say that special schools are still important because typical schools are not good enough for disabled kids yet. Because I think they're so, in so many ways, they fail to celebrate children the way that we do at the Latika Roy Foundation. And the other thing that's important to remember is that for some children, being apart is important for a short time to get accustomed to the hurly-burly of mainstream school. Like a child with autism is like literally being assaulted by the noise and the chaos and the unpredictability of a typical classroom. So sometimes for those kids, it's really helpful to have a period of time in a special school, in a special environment where you can gradually get used to what is going to be your experience when you go into mainstream.
Very well said, Joe. Thank you so much for that. What do you see the government's sort of role in this inclusion process, and where do you think we can start changing things?
So first, get the physical infrastructure organized. Right now, it's a shambles. There are very few schools that are truly inclusive and accessible. Second is make the curriculum geared to every child. Like right now, it's a completely 18th century curriculum that was designed for creating babus and people who would work in factories, basically, and it served the ruling class of that time. It doesn't work anymore. So we have to move away from this chalk and talk approach of a teacher standing up in front of a big classroom of children and lecturing. And I think what NGOs are doing is they are doing the innovation and showing the government what is possible, but it's not our job to take it to scale. That's the government's job. So our job is the innovation and their job is the institution. They have to take what they can learn from us and put it on a wider scale.